that warm introduction. Now, all day we've been listening to how GCCs have become innovation hubs, and they truly have. Their role has evolved over the last few years, and at the core of all of it is now smart data play. Today, we're going to unpack, with the help of all these visionary leaders here, how exactly the intersection of data infrastructure, AI insights, and also data driven leadership are making sure that they can evolve their GCCs with agility and scale, but also more importantly, with purpose and precision. It's such a beautifully designed panel here today. We have people who interact with data at various levels. We have leaders who are shaping data. For instance, we have Navin Bishnoi, who's with Marvell. They make semiconductors. So, right there at the foundation of data. And right at the top, we have Arun and Srinivas, who sit right at the end of the funnel. We have here Tapsi, who is responsible for pre-design and design. And we have Geetanjali, who is service enabler and provider. So it's a very interesting mix that we have here. So let me start off with my first question. Let me glean their insights on what is, firstly, a very warm welcome to all of you here. Thank you once again for joining us. And my question is, what is the single most impactful shift that you have made in your data strategy or infrastructure that is elevating your role within the global enterprise, the role of your GCC? And Geetanjali, of course, when I come to you, it's from a service provider perspective, but I'll start it off with Tapsi here.
Shilpa, first of all, thank you so much for welcoming us over here. Thank you to this wonderful audience. It's been very insightful all this morning hearing about GCCs and really people coming from different domains and different technology sectors. I really enjoyed my time here. So coming to your question about, strategic shift when it comes to data, maybe I'll talk about, there are a couple of things that come to my mind. There's not one thing because some of these stories are really interrelated. The biggest shift that some of the organizations are going through, including ours as well, is really data governance, right? So we talk about there was, I'll maybe draw a timeline here for everybody. So this is pre-COVID when everybody was talking about digitization, right? Everything was pretty manual. There were files, there were these, sheets that were not really accessible or PDF documents that you can't really do much with, not really smart data category. And so pre-COVID, there was a lot of digitization effort, right? Whether that's in the utility space or critical infrastructure space, we were seeing a lot of that. And this is my sentiment towards it, is that COVID really expedited and accelerated that journey of making sure that every piece of data is digitized. So that was part one of the journey. Once that was done, right, we're now looking at the big shift in the strategy is predictive, right? How can we see the future? And that's where AI fits in really nicely. But to really be able to predict, your data needs to be accurate, right? That's where data governance really fits in. So when we talk about one key strategy, that's something we're focusing on, looking at, how do we collect data? How do we consume data? How do we share data? How do we even protect data, right? And when you look at data governance and platform standardization, once you put both of them together, is when you can start looking at the predictive solutions and the analysis henceforth.
Data governance is paramount because the quality of output depends on the data, the accuracy of data that's going in the first place. And Geetanjali, would love to hear your perspective. How are you viewing data and how are you helping your partners leverage?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a bit on my role, because it's important before I give you my perspective on how data is enabling a partner in the GCC journey. So Capgemini has been working with the GCCs for over 2 decades now. And myself, the first GCC when I worked with was almost 22 years back in Pune, the first GCC which came in HSBC. So we have been enabling partner because we have never differentiated between an enterprise and GCC. And I think it's a very important point because client is a client for us, and ensuring that how GCCs today are successful. I've always believed in one philosophy: connecting the dots, okay, between the enterprise, the service provider, and GCC to make a great, valuable shift and a story. And to be credible, it was so important. And my role now, which is the advisory and transformation leader, which we call as Invent, and I'm also now taken a role as a GCC practice head. The whole objective was to look at how we bring strategy, advisory to execution and implementation end to end. And technology and data plays a key role. Yeah, there is a tectonic shift happening, and we just heard our one of our esteemed colleague who talked about Gen AI. We all know the importance of how the mobilization is happening, the tectonic shift is happening, and if we have to be credible, we have to be ahead the curve in ensuring that we create data, emergence of data as a strategic asset, and we have done that for many years now. We have the trend which I'm seeing today, that most of our GCCs, and I'm sure you all will acknowledge that we are moving, GCCs are taking an active role in moving to product-based operating model. And when you move to the product-based operating model, you need to adopt to the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud strategy, isn't it? You need that infrastructure. And to do that infrastructure successful with the valuable outcomes, emergence of data as an asset becomes extremely critical. So as Capgemini, or as any other service provider who is in this room as a systems integrator, would know that how critical that is. So we have invested a lot in AI, analytics, COEs, DevOps Center of Excellence, and to ensure that we provide that to our partners. And I'll talk a little more about how much of that investment we are doing as we go along.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Geetanjali. I'll ask Navin to come in with his perspective.
Sure. Thank you, Shilpa. Hello, everyone. I represent a company called Marvell Semiconductors. And a few years back, if people asked me, what's Marvell and what's semiconductor? Thankfully, that trend has changed. People know semiconductors, and those of you who know Marvell, they then started calling you the superhero of the next technology or the trends that's coming in. And then I fit in here in a very different way. I think if you look at data, there's a whole data uplift that is happening, and then we are the foundations to manage that data. We build the semiconductor solutions that can process this data that's been generated. It can move the data, it can store the data, and then keep the data secure, as we are talking about. And especially about all this data, there are two ways to look at it, right? All of you have been using GPUs in some form as you build your software applications and all of that. We build a lot of those processing units, and the processing units invention has reached to a very different scale. We are seeing a very high throughput and a performance of the processing power of data. What is still challenging is the networking that data has to be done. A lot of data, actually, research shows that when a data is moving around, it's almost like 50% of the time data is moving around. So network is becoming the challenge part of within the data center to data center, cities to cities, across continents. And there's a lot of focus on how do we move the data faster. And that's where a lot of inventions is happening, from electrical to an optical, and so that we can move the data faster and be able to leverage GPU, the performance, as well as the network. But as I do this engineering, there's also a thing about saying, you see every year, each one of these hyperscalers, the big enterprise company, comes and announce a next generation hardware and the infrastructure for the next AI-based data centers. So there's no more these infrastructures upgrade happens once in 2 years, 3 years, it's every year. So I leverage a lot of this data when I say, would you believe the chip that any one of your phone has already reached to a 200 billion transistors. That's the number of transistors that is there in one chip, and I have to go sit and do it on my laptop to ensure when it comes out, it works. It will be 1 trillion in 5 years. So how do I leverage the data to ensure that when I do simulation, design, optimization, and then finally manufacturing and testing, I leverage a lot of these data play to ensure that we do it first time right, we can do it in a yearly canvas, and get it out to you for the best infrastructure that we need.
That's fantastic. And I also want to talk to you more about the innovation lens of it. But we'll listen to Srinivas and come back to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Shilpa. That was a great one. In fact, I think more than what I'm going to talk, my son will be interested to hear where you're coming from. He's an avid Avengers fan. So am I, by the way. That said, it was really interesting to see that all the way down to the transistors that you're talking about. And I come from the exact opposite end of the north side of the spectrum. We build products that are for the boards, for the board members, for the CXOs, independent directors who are actually looking into governance, risk, and compliance audit for companies, mostly pre-IPO, IPO, or public companies. So you can imagine the kind of data and the kind of details that have to go into it. A board book can something that has to be reviewed in a couple of hours could be anything between 400 and 800 pages, depending on the size of the company, the kind of data that they're trying to put in. And now imagine how much time goes into building that board book, building that data that should make sense, that should be good for the shareholders of the company. And then comes the whole governance piece on what exactly should be the right questions. Is this the right decision to take? Where should we be going? How should that board actually take the right call? And in all of this, what we have done is taken all of those decades of experience that we have in looking at board books and the board meetings that go on, and compile that into the products that we are building. In fact, our GCC here in India was the first one to build out the first product for Diligent in terms of the AI product that we built. So you can imagine the kind of research, the kind of data, the kind of work that we are doing to help customers take that 400, 500 page book, build it first up by giving the right information that's needed, summarize it, glean insights out of it, and then take that to make it into what should be shared with the shareholders and all the other independent directors. So in the entire journey of right from where we were talking about, from transistors to enablement using AI to the data that's being used, all of that find its way into the board books, and that's what we are powering with our strategy.
And streamlining data there, indeed.
Yes.
And Arun, you also sit right at the end of the funnel. So talk to us about that. I'm sure there's some synergy there with Srinivas.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So Shilpa, as you initially mentioned, we are at the other end of the funnel. I mean, there are data centers. Prior to the data center, there are obviously semiconductors. We are the users of all that stuff. Going back to your question in terms of how is GCC evolving, right? So one clearly point of view that I have is in the last few years, GCCs have been delivery centers, right? So there were products owned, customers in other countries. India was delivering to those countries and delivering product solutions, ideas, innovations, etc. Right? So what it has evolved to is largely value, right? And what I mean by value is co-creating solutions, building products from here, and I'll tell what is sort of funneling it is when most of the GCCs were set up, they were extension arms for different business units headquartered elsewhere, right? But what really happened was once that became a sizable number, that number became an advantage because now one location, which is probably India, had the view of that company's businesses across different business lines, right? So, which is basically using data of the customers, data of the company itself, and helping building new solutions, right? So that's where we are evolving to as a GCC.
I'm going to take it across to go ahead, Geetanjali.
Just to build on what Arun said, I fully agree. The GCCs are no longer the remote cost cutting organizations, right? They have evolved and the role has completely changed, more as an enterprise partner, more as a value partner, and more as a innovation partner to their enterprise. And I think to all that what you all was saying, it resonates so well. And absolutely, we have a key role as a service provider. We have a key role to become your enabling partner, innovation partner in that journey, because that's the role has changed. And I think many of us who are here today are absolutely looking to resonate and make that change in our current way of working to be that.
I really liked, Arun, what you just said. I just wanted to piggyback off of that and just add something. So, in the morning session, I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to attend, but somebody just mentioned in the morning that players from all over the world, they come to India for setting up GCCs. They come here for cost, right? Because there is a cost benefit, but they don't really stay here for cost, because if cost was the only parameter, then there is a lot of other options that are on the table, especially in the APAC region that we look at. So very, very interesting what you mentioned, right? How the shift is happening, not just in terms of the value that the GCCs are creating, but also in terms of the type of work, the innovation, the R&D, which is really interesting to see, right? So I do remember even a decade ago, there was this myth that all that GCC can do really well is repeat work, right, as data entry. And now we look at the evolution of it, and we look at how the next generation of technology is coming in, and how GCCs are going to have a very, very key role in making sure the adoption and the embracing of those technologies really happen. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for that. And that leads me to a very smooth segue into my next question. Moving away from cost arbitrage, and now our GCCs are making sure that they are innovation hubs. And AI is also a keen driver of this, because it's easier to roll out POCs in a GCC, in a smaller, outset like a GCC. So I'll actually come across to Navin right at the middle of the panel here. When it comes to AI, how are you strategically embedding AI into perhaps your core operational or engineering processes? And can you share one key business outcome that's come in for your GCC from this strategic innovation or weaving in?
Sure. So I have an engineering perspective on that, right? I was saying that when I design chip, we are talking about one chip having 100 billion, 200 billion transistors. And then I have to do this. This development takes probably hundreds of engineers, hundreds of $1 million, and thousands of hours to get to a chip that can get out into a system. When I go and do it, and the chip we are talking about in 3 nanometer, 2 nanometer. So what you can is that it's a 10,000 size, 1 by 10,000 size of a hair or something like that, you can imagine, right? So there are electrical challenges, there are physical challenges, there are manufacturing challenges that we need to feed into our design engineering to design that chip and then be able to get it out in this thing. And that's where I would say, while I'm enabling AI by building the GPUs and XPUs and the networking, but I use the Copilot and the other stuff in my day-to-day work to be able to manage these data that's generated from this billions of transistors, their properties, being able to simulate, make a decision, and do it faster, so that my product development cycle, which was 18 months, has been started shrinking from 18 months to 15 months, and we are seeing that can I do it in a 12 months cadence, right? That's where we are trying to lead to complexity increase, but use the technology to also keep it in the same way. Have I reached that? Probably not. We are all trying to do that, because when I just run the simulations, it's run for weeks. And when we say about cloud, and I say about, every week I say I need maybe 20,000 more CPUs to be added in my data center to be able to do some simulations. So that's the scale that I'm talking about. And that's where a Gen AI comes in, helps me with a lot of simulation using the data, do it faster using a limited set, and then help reduce the cycle time there. There are examples on software side as well, but maybe I'll come back if we need to.
Absolutely. Agentic AI is also proving to be a game changer. Arun, would you like to step in there?
Sure. I'll put two perspectives to it, though you asked for one. So the way I would put it as two perspectives is one, internal focused usage of, let's say, data and AI, and external focused usage of data and AI, right? So internal focus, obviously, every single person you ask, I think even the presentation before, the first use case shows up as saying, okay, there's a new chatbot which is going to help everybody, right? Maybe it helps reduce operational costs, but I don't know how much of us are really measuring is the customer really happy talking to an agent? Is that person really getting that information, right? So focusing inward, the two key things is one, knowledge management. So the amount of knowledge which gets spread across the organization as we grow, I think consolidating it, making it impactful for a developer, for a user, for a business person inside the company. I think AI and even the data collection bit of it is really helping on that front. Right. Second, even from a point of view of internal, we are one of the biggest partners for Microsoft. In fact, one of the biggest customers for Microsoft, where usage of Copilot is really driving developer efficiency. I think I can vouch for it, where we are clearly seeing benefits of developer efficiency. We measure those developer efficiencies. It's not a fad, but it's real reality in terms of how a developer is actually becoming better in using these. But when I look at it externally, that's where business and monetization comes, right? I mean, internal is typically efficiency. External is clear. I think in terms of we using solutions where websites are auto-generated based on the user, right? Or it could be dynamic pricing. I mean, you check into a hotel. Okay, I didn't talk about my company, but we are into the travel tech space. So all technology powering hotels, airports, airlines, etc. So if you check into a hotel, or rather even before you check into a hotel, you're deciding on the hotel prices, what should be the room, what could be the impact, is there a disruption potentially coming? I mean, war is an example, right? If there is a war, how should the pricing of a hotels change, right? So those are all AI driven these days. A lot of these models are driven out of India, and we are helping monetize that. Monetization is not a one-time story. It's a long journey, and we have just begun using this data for that.
Thank you for sharing your AI journey with those practical examples. I believe Geetanjali wants to add to that.
Yeah, just to add, of course, data for transparency, data for monetization, all the right words. What we have looked at in three places where we have started to not just do it internally, but providing and extending the POCs and value to the clients on AI, GenAI, or agentic AI. I think one, of course, the whole software lifecycle, right? SDLC, where using that we are showing improvements into the productivity improvement and shorter life cycle of doing coding and code, no code, and so there is a lot of contracts, not just value, but also the contracts showing significant value. One, we are also doing a lot of work for the future of CFO organization, sales management function, all those core functions of an organization for very large clients. We are showing by doing that how their go-to market and their ability to shorten or responding has become improvement. There are various examples, and of course everyone is doing in a lot, but KYC is a great subject to tackle through Gen AI, through agentic AI, and we are on the advanced stage of rolling that out. So the point is that it could be always seen as cost productivity improvement, AI as a tool, as a mechanics, or as an operating model. But you can also see that as how to help organizations increase the revenue models, and both carry equal weight. Okay, and I think we need to we find those solutions. I mean, the latest again, GenAI on edge, which touches all the engineering part and the core chips part. Also, we are doing that because we have a great engineering arm. But what I was trying to say is, my earlier discussion was more on tectonic shift. This is also requires a mindset shift, where you're doing cost improvement, productive improvement, and also innovation and revenue models impact.
I don't think and I feel like it's all interconnected, right? The driving efficiency, there's cost optimization, and there is faster delivery times, right? I think it's all definitely interconnected. I believe Tapsi and Srinivas, would you also like to talk to us about how AI is practically enabling you, and perhaps share key business outcomes?
Yeah, that's. I was actually itching to add on. The way we are actually getting AI into every part of our delivery cycle. In fact, I'm misspeaking when I'm saying only the delivery cycle. It's much before that. It's from imagine Our customers are there in about 130 different countries, more than 1 million boards, and all the independent directors combined. You can imagine the number of diverse comments, inputs, critical feedback, and everything that comes in. And right from starting from there to utilizing AI to look at what are the kind of products, the improvements, the features that need to come in, to taking requirements gathering as a starting point of the SDLC, to rolling out based on automated AI tests or test cases, measuring it like you were saying. We've got integration with Jira for GitHub Copilot, Cursor. We measure how many lines of code are written by AI versus a human. We're looking at how we can improve efficiency, right down to, like I think Zivia was talking about how they do their marketing, all the way down to how we are doing our marketing targeted and looking at the efficiency of our products. So you can see the entire life cycle being covered by AI, and our focus is about the customer. How fast can we get something out to our customer? How efficiently we can do it in, and how can we target even those small customers who might not have had a voice before, when we were doing a manual kind of a tracking of the requirements, or let's say prioritization. Now it's much more easier for us to take all of it, figure out how to blend it in, use AI to actually move quickly and efficiently, and get it out the door, such that more and more customers are being serviced at a much more shorter time frame. Just like how you were mentioning, 18 to 15 to 12 months, that's what we are looking at, and our cycles are getting even more shorter. There was a time when we would say waterfall model, we would say agile model, we said 2-week sprints, we said each sprint should have something working in production, and now it's going more toward weekly and maybe even daily kind of code going into production. So that's the push, that's the efficiency that we are building, and the velocity that we are having as an advantage, that we can reach out to our customer.
It's great to see how you are enabling value addition by automating all these other processes. Fantastic to see that. And Tapsi, please go ahead.
Yeah, so Shilpa, I come from a slightly different background, and that's why I really like how the panel is stitched together. We really represent different domains and fields. So Burns & McDonnell is an engineering, procurement, construction organization. We're very diverse in nature. We not only do design, pre-design, but we also do a lot of the planning, just, before you even think about construction. So there's a lot of steps that need to happen prior to that. We're starting from, feasibility and planning. And so we cover the whole spectrum, and that's the value chain that we bring to our clients and customers. So there are 3 things that I will focus on, to really answer your question. We're focusing, if you look at any of the initiatives at the moment, digital initiatives that are going on within Burns & McDonnell, I think to simplify, they can fit into one of the 3 categories. The first one is enterprise integration. The second one is making sure whatever we can, try to make it autonomous, right? How can we automate the script writing? If we are doing any site selection, can that be automated by a script so that manual effort can be cut down? And then the third aspect is really predictive, right? Can we really leverage the data that we all really heavily spoke about? And can we really predict the future? And unfortunately, if you look at the construction industry, it's been left behind, right? We look at the software development, and we look at even the semiconductor from that perspective. I think those domains have gained leaps and bounds from the technology that came out. But construction, unfortunately, was still using the age-old, Excel spreadsheets. The assets still are not really properly tagged, so you don't know what the field crew is doing versus the people in the office do not have real-time information. And only, I think, in the last few years, a big shift in the construction domain has happened, and we are absolutely at Burns & McDonnell heavily emphasizing on, one, we tie all of our enterprise data together for ourselves, but also externally for our clients, so that we can better leverage the data, we can predict the future, and we can, as much as possible, automate any of the work that we're doing.
It's great to see how there's client centricity there, and it's breaking down all the silos. Thank you for sharing that. And now, staying with you, Tapsi, I actually want to also ask you about, now we're talking so much about data. What's the point of data if you're not having data-driven decision making, right? Now, to enable that, how do you have a buy-in from your leadership teams and your key talent teams? What is your strategy to convince them?
So, Shilpa, I'm going to be biased. I think this is by far my favorite question at the moment. It's a people centric question, right? And it is my core belief, and I can speak for other leaders at Burns and McDonnell. People come first. We are a 100% employee owned organization, and we can only achieve that if people come first, right? So, to answer your question, I think the first thing that we are doing and really heavily focusing on is innovation first culture. How can we set that up? Which means allow people to fail and allow them to fail really fast so that we can really learn the lessons and move on. We no longer are shaming that, we did something and look at that, this didn't really succeed. So innovation first culture, which starts with employee ownership, it starts with the mindset shift that Geetanjali talked about. So that's number one. The second one is really, advocacy from our executive team. We are making sure that we take the help from different executives throughout our organization on any initiatives so that they can sit down with their respective teams, nuclear teams or global practices is how we refer to, and then they can really get the buy-in from those teams early on into the life cycle, and really heavily focused on change management aspect as well, so that we don't surprise anybody internally or externally with any of the new initiatives that we come up with. Last not the least, we talked about employee ownership, we talked about innovation first culture, but last not the least, we also make sure that we have council set up from across different teams where people come in together and they prioritize together. Because what was happening before, and this is a problem that a lot of companies have faced, especially diverse companies, that teams work in a lot of silos, right? Which means that you have a solution and then that solution is not reusable. To make a solution reusable, you need to make sure that you have a council that is a mixed amalgamation of different teams, and then those teams sit together to prioritize together and to say these are the top 3 initiatives that we should be working on. So those are the things that we're focusing on.
All right. I can't believe we're running out of time really fast. I'll go to Arun with this. But in the meanwhile, if any of you have any questions, I'll open it up in just a couple of minutes to the audience. So keep your questions ready and we'll come across to you. So we'll come to you in just 2 minutes. I want to listen to Arun and then we'll come across to you.
On the same topic, it's quite interesting. Data remains just text if not used well, right? So from a point of view, let's take a travel industry, which I have experience on. Data is the key factor in enabling anything that's happening these days, right? Just taking an example, we were using, and the bit Tapsi mentioned on running in silos, it's similar. We have airlines, airports, hotels as businesses. Airport data remained airport data, hospitality data remained hospitality data, train data remained train data, right? But when used together, the impact that it can have on a traveler, right? So for example, if I check into a hotel, let's take a simple example. Let's say the flight gets cancelled. What's the first thing that you would have to do is either find an alternate flight, which is typically the behavior in the past. But now some of these solutions can enable saying, okay, now I can give you an alternate flight plus a hotel somewhere, right? Because I have the hotel data and the flights got delayed or got cancelled. So maybe you can fine tune the experience at an hotel. Maybe the hotel can send a taxi and bring that person from the airport to the hotel, and all that can be driven if you're able to weave the data together. And a lot of these innovations are happening, as I said initially, because these systems and solutions are co-created in one location, and probably India is the sort of hub where most of these businesses are running together. So co-creation with customers is becoming a big thing these days. And last but not the least, one of the most important aspect is tech solutions from India was catering to solutions outside the world, outside India. India is becoming a big market. Southeast Asia is becoming a big market, and these have very different personality, traveler personas compared to the rest of the world, right? So I think some of this is we are able to use that data to help cater to travelers, shaping the industry.
I think of it as making meaningful baskets of data, that is really usable for the consumer. So go ahead, yes.
So that was interesting. You were talking about all the verticals like hospitality and airlines. So I was somehow unconsciously mapping it to our verticals that are there. So our GCC has all the different kind of roles here, whether it's product engineering, support, success, integrations, every different role. So our GCC is pretty diverse. And up to about a year ago, everybody was having their own Excel sheets, their own data about their customers, about the churn of the customers. We wouldn't know in engineering or in product or even in success as to the customer successes who actually interfaces with the customers. We wouldn't even know that there's a churn that might actually happen. And today, with the advent of AI and how we are stitching all of it together, we are able to glean those insights across all of these support verticals, or all of these verticals, so to speak, to be able to predict and get to a place where we can use the data to either stop churn, get new customers, and basically delight the customer. And that has been fundamental in how we have been able to drive outcomes. It's not just about delivering a feature. It's not about doing something faster. It's about how are we able to drive an outcome sitting from where we are across the world, the 130 countries that I was talking about. So I was correlating that in my head.
I just wanted to build, because you did ask a question around talent, and in this rapid tech, the talent readiness is so important and so critical. I just thought I'll still pick this up because we have, as a research and insights institute, which we run as one of our vertical, we have come up with the thought leaders, a book on GenAI for managers, because most of the companies, including us, we get everyone certified and trained on latest and greatest cloud certified, GenAI certified. But it's important, GenAI for managers is critical because it's not just about delegating, but also doing. And for that, it's important. So we are doing a roadshow on GenAI for managers, which will be quite publicized to all of you all for the usage. But using that in an environment, what we have is a startup ecosystem where people are not just learning theoretically, but also doing it. Because when you do, then you do it in action. And today, going back to the GCC topic again, GCCs are not just for cost. We said value, and talent brings the value. So ensuring that talent is ready and adopting to this change is equally critical. And we all have a role to play in that.
I love how enthusiastic our panelists are. I wanted to come across to the audience member for a question, but I loved hearing all their perspectives. So go ahead. I believe you have a question.
Thank you. My name is Bhavesh Panchal. It was, first of all, thanks for sharing and listening to all this valuable, use case and experience from all the leaders. My question to you, especially maybe for Arun and Geetanjali, I think it's great to use the data everywhere in various model, but can you share your perspective, because we have a lot of framework where data needs to be protected and it should not be used beyond the intended purpose. So what's your takeaway on that?
Absolutely. I think that's the paramount thing. Amount of data that we have, personal data that we have about a customer is significant. And it is very important that it is used for the right thing. The second, also, we were discussing behind the scenes on data residency, right? So a lot of these businesses were initially designed for one country, one customer, or a set of customer in a particular region. So data residency was not a big thing, but things have evolved. Europe data constraints or restrictions, US has similar ones. So I think the products are being redesigned and used consciously to make sure data resides in certain places. And as an organization, we have to use, when we are using GenAI, is it using it for the right reasons? Are it, biases to be removed, etc. So there is significant focus being put on it. I don't have a real good answer when you say, is this being used for right or wrong reasons? I would say most of the organizations have strong guidelines to make sure that what kind of data is usable or not. Simple things like credit card data is not to be shared, right? We could do a lot of things with it, but then we can't use it. So I think these are put way ahead in the development cycle to say what can be used, what is even available for a developer to even think, saying I'm designing some based on that data, and that data is controlled at that level and not at the last level to say, okay, this should not have been used, so it would not happen?
I think very excellent question, and I can just build on what Arun just said. Even if the sandboxes we build, I mean, first is the co-creation for the client, with keeping the client in mind, keeping the data security in mind, keeping the data regulation in mind, including ensuring the EU Act of Data, which we all have adopted, is absolutely critical. Even the sandboxes which we have built for our teams to work in the and play with is for regulatory separate and regular separate. So there are multiple examples which we can talk offline to you in terms of how we are using that for which domain of the client and the IP, what is IP and what can be regular. There are many examples to share.
We're completely out of time now. I'm very sorry about that. Absolutely out of time. I believe our panelists are still around after the session. So perhaps you can connect with them after that. I'm so sorry about this. Even I had a lot of questions for them. I haven't spoken to them about the data infrastructure, whether they want, how they design it, cloud, on-prem, and I didn't even know that they'd make it so interesting at the end of the day. But thank you so much. And, that was a great question that came there. It really goes to show that how we're going to secure our data is going to determine how we leverage it and harness it. And that's precisely how we're going to be led into the future with smart data play. Thank you so much for this session. I had no idea where the time went. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to each and every one of you. You're all responsible for shaping, making, and disseminating and leveraging data at different points of the delivery cycle. And it's great to see it all come together. Thank you. Thanks so much.